Verdict is time for retribution. Burn.
They all just looked very similar.
They are it's the same thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I want to like it and I just can't.
So, I might have mentioned before, different characters, along with their weapons and elements, they have what's called a burst, an elemental burst, which is their special power. They charge it up throughout the fight, and then they can use it to do something big in the fight.
Right, so it's kind of like a special power-up move.
Yeah, it's their ultimate move sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go through them. I'm going to show you an example of the burst, and then I just want you to guess what it does. A lot of them are pretty obvious, and then after that I'll ask you what you kind of rate it out of 10 visually wise, so if you think it looks really cool or maybe just a bit boring. I'm going to go through them in order of when the characters came out, so you can see a progression of maybe how the people who created the game have gotten better or worse at creating these burst animations, and if you have any comments, feel free to make them.
Cool, let's go.
Okay, so we're going to start off with a character called Diluc.
Verdict is time for retribution. Burn.
So that's Diluc's burst. What do you think it does?
He looks like he kind of creates like a flame eagle that goes through them and like burns them all.
Yeah, pretty much. It creates I think it's a phoenix, and then it also, as you see here, his sword is on fire.
Yeah.
For the next few seconds in the fight, he does fire damage instead of normal damage.
Okay, it's kind of cool. It looks like it kind of knocks them back a bit as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of crowd control.
I can see how it'd be useful, but it's not the most interesting to watch. Like the phoenix isn't very like detailed.
It's gone quite quickly as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool though. It's probably like 6 out of 10.
Fair enough. Okay, we'll move on next to the next character, who is Jean.
Swear by my sword. Barbados, guide us. Wind, hear me.
Like I can kind of understand it, but it's ice. It looks like it would be wind more.
It is wind.
What was it wind? Had a little ice things in it though.
That enemy had already had an ice element on them.
Okay, so at least it can like react to other things that's
Yeah.
going on around it. It's still just very boring. It doesn't even seem very useful either. Like it looks like it slightly knocks them back and just the damage, but that's about it.
So what's maybe not too obvious here is that it also does heal the team.
Okay.
So when your character is standing in that circle that it creates, as well as dealing damage to enemies, it does heal the creatures who are there,
I
or the
guess
characters.
that kind of makes sense. It's still just really boring. You could do that in a lot more of an interesting way, I think.
Yeah.
It's probably like a 4.
Quite a quick, simple animation.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next character, we have Keqing.
Cut to the chase. Nowhere to hide. Cut to the chase.
I think that's quite interesting. I like that there's kind of like the different versions of like ghost hers.
Like the after image.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is Electro.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best one so far. But I feel like they could have done slightly more with it, but it's still definitely very interesting. It's kind of like an area effect attack where it affects like a really wide area, but maybe not as powerfully as like a direct attack. I think it's definitely the most interesting so far, and it seems like it would be very useful in a fight. That's probably like a 7.5. Could do more, but still interesting.
Fair enough. Next, we'll go on to Mona.
Fate is upon you.
I
Written
have
in
no
the
idea what's going on.
Fate is upon you.
That's just a lot of things happening.
So Mona is an astrologist, and as you can see in some of these animations, some of the enemies who are hit have sort of star signs on them.
Oh, okay.
So what this does, it does a bit of damage straight away, but then enemies who are hit by these star signs, they take extra damage for a short period of time.
It seems overly complicated for what she's doing. Like, I don't really get the whole bubble thing. The zoom in on her I kind of get because it's about her. It's more so in hers. It goes right up to her face rather than, especially in Jean's, it was just like, it was still a full image of her.
Yeah, that's true. The first 3 that we've had are a lot less in your face than some of the next ones that we will be seeing.
I think it feels like it'd take you out of the fight slightly with that happening.
Definitely know what you're talking about there, yeah.
It's interesting, it just doesn't, it seems out of place in a way.
What would you give out of 10?
Like 5. It seems useful, but not the best way of doing it.
Finally, for the last character that was in the game as it came out in its initial launch, we have Chi-Chi.
Sacred name, fortune preserver. Opening box of Adepti Tricks. Sacred name, fortune preserver.
I like that one. It kind of plays on her whole like death backstory.
Yeah, like the zombie.
Yeah, that's really cool because even though it does zoom in on her a bit more than like the first three, it wasn't nearly as much as Mona's, and it doesn't take you out as much, I don't feel, especially because it's like a slow zoom in from the very beginning. But yeah, it's still sort of like the whole area of effect sort of thing, potentially a slight knockback.
What do you think about those symbols that she puts on the enemies?
Oh, is it so like if they have the symbol on them, then if she attacks them, then they do more damage?
Close. It actually, any character who attacks an enemy with that symbol gets healed.
Oh, okay.
So she's like a healing
Yeah.
character.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, that's easily like a 8, 8.5-ish out of 10.
Okay, so moving on to the first banner character that came out in the game, which is basically the sort of special new 5-star that came out, which is Venti.
Think you can get away? Time for takeoff.
I understand it. I don't think I like it that much. I think the idea behind the attack of like one really powerful shot down one line and anything and like the path of it gets affected is good, but all like the kind of spirals and extra effects on it.
So I feel like, although it is obviously doing a lot of damage, one of the biggest perks of this ability is it's grouping everyone together and keeping them in one space.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. It just feels very chaotic.
I mean, that kind of fits Venti pretty well.
Yeah. I don't know. It's cool. I can see how it would be used very well. I just don't think the animation style is for me.
Fair enough. And what would you give that out of 10?
7 out of 10. It seems very useful.
Yes, I would say it definitely is. Now moving on to Klee.
Kind of cute. Also, I don't fully understand what she's doing.
So Klee's all about bombs,
Yeah.
and this is a big boom bomb. Can't remember the exact name, I'll put it up on the screen. But this is like her special bomb. You can see it's a bit delayed, but it starts shooting sort of like bombs in the sky that hit the enemies.
Okay, so it's like a targeted missile type thing that she's doing.
Yeah, it lasts for about, I think it's 10 seconds, and it does damage over
Yeah, that's quite cool. I like that it kind of suits her with it kind of being like cutesy as well.
Yeah, definitely. She's
I
one of
quite
my
like
favourite
that one.
characters.
I feel, again, they potentially could have done more with the actual like attacking of them.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, it just feels very simplistic, like they just have like the little flower, like fire flower that goes and hits them instead of something else. Like especially with Venti's where he had all the big lines like trying to keep them all in one area.
Yeah.
Instead she just has little fire flowers that hit them.
Fair enough. I think part of the appeal of Klee isn't her burst, it's the rest of her kit that makes her...
Yeah, that makes
useful.
it. You can kind of tell that they haven't spent as much, or potentially as much tension on her.
Yeah, some characters definitely, the reason to use them in your team is more their burst, and some others, the burst is sort of a bonus on top.
Yeah, I think I'd probably give it like a 6. Seems useful, maybe not as important as others.
So next we're moving on to Tartaglia, also known as Child.
Riptide! You can run, but you can't hide. No time to lose. Shouldn't let your guard down.
Seems like a lot of them are all very
Brace
like area of
yourself.
effect.
This is gonna hurt.
Yeah, so this one I actually showed more clips here because he actually has 2 bursts. One when he's using his bow, where he shoots his bow out an area, and another one he's using, his ability changes from a bow into like a twin blades, and in this one you see he pulls like a spear out and does different damage. So it does a very similar thing. It's a big area of damage, but it just changes depending on what he's doing at the time.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting that it has like 2 versions of it, and they're just slightly different in each of them. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good one. It seems pretty useful. Maybe not as good as some of the others so far.
What about just visually? What do you think?
Visually it's alright. I feel like there's been a thing in a few of the others as well, that just like colour-wise, it's not that interesting. It's all just kind of one blank colour. It does match that element.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
it
you'll
makes
find-
sense.
Yeah, you'll find that a lot.
Yeah, I'd probably give that like a 7. It's interesting that it changes.
Okay, well next we will move on to Zhongli.
I will have order. This is order. Order guide you.
That one's pretty cool. It's like a big like bomb thing from the sky.
It's like a meteor.
Yeah, I like that it's all very geometric.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. What about the whole, you see in some of these clips, the enemies are sort of frozen in stone?
Oh yeah, that's quite cool. I'm assuming they stand there for like a few seconds and then
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 seconds.
yeah. It's a little bit boring.
Bruh.
It's interesting, but I feel like you'd get sick of it quite quickly.
So what would you give that?
Like a 6. Seems very useful as well, to be fair, with freezing the enemies for a little while.
Okay, and we'll move on to the next character, also Geo, but this time it's Albedo.
Moments of birth, free. Witness my great undertaking. Feel this ancient power.
I don't fully understand what's going on, but it looks cool, so I'm just gonna leave it. It's fine.
Yeah, so in this one, if he just does it on its own, it just does the first animation with a big sort of rocky blast at the start. But in these clips, what I've done, if he uses his other ability first, then it creates lots of these other little sort of flashy flower star things afterwards, which do bonus damage afterwards.
I just think it looks really cool.
I really
like
like
that
this
it's
one.
kind of like a stone circle he's creating almost.
Yeah, he's an alchemist, so he's all about creating
Yeah.
things. So what would you give this?
See, with this one as well, it's not just the one like yellow colour, he has other bits in there, which I feel like others are slightly lacking. Or it's mainly with the starburst that he's got that.
There's more patterns, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good 8.5. I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to a character called Ganyu.
For Rex Lapis. All hail.
It's interesting. It's like, it looks like she's kind of creating the world out of ice in a way.
So she puts this big orb in the sky which rains
Yeah.
like icicles down on enemies.
I think it's quite cool. And it's kind of like giving them like a frozen effect as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it adds the cryo damage, like all cryo damage. will do
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Same with other elements.
I think like it would have been cool if instead of going back to her at the very end, instead they did like a top down and you could see more of the icicles go down on them.
I see what you mean. I think
Just give it like another angle.
the
just so you
one
can see a bit
issue I
more.
can see with that is it sort of takes you out of the
Yeah,
fight.
it
when you do
does.
that. So what do you give this out of 10?
Seems useful, but maybe not that good. So like a 6.
I would say you're not using her for a burst as much as
Yeah.
for other things as well. Now we have Zhao.
Disappear. Worthless.
That one's quite.
Here. Lament. Disappear. Worthless.
It's kind of got like a triple effect.
Yeah, so this one, I showed a bit more than just the animation because it's not super obvious what it does straight away.
Yeah, I don't really understand what it does. It just looks cool.
So normally, when people attack, they do the white numbers, which is normal damage or
Yeah.
physical damage. But what this one does is it makes all of his damage anemo damage, which is air damage. And it also lets him jump really high, which means you can do these big plunging attacks, which have a really big area of effect.
Yeah.
And obviously the animation has all the spikes coming out of the ground, spears.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Like, it's actually interesting. It's more than just one simple color doing things as well. It's got highlights and lowlights and everything, whereas
Yeah,
some of them
the-
haven't been.
The attack animations are really nice, I really love it.
Yeah, it's actually nice to watch, and it seems very useful as well. I think that's probably the best one so far. I'd probably give it a 9.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that one. Next we'll move on to Hu Tao.
Higher, pants on fire. Time to go.
It's very quick. It's a lot quicker than the rest, like a few of the others.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means you can get
Yeah,
back to doing
true.
other things.
It kind of like creates the ghost and just throws it out.
Yeah, she like slams people with a ghost.
I think the idea behind it is cool, but I think it's just slightly too quick to be able to appreciate it, I feel.
I think visually wise, I definitely understand what you're talking about. Gameplay wise, you really
Yeah.
want something quite quick so you can get back
Yeah,
to.
I understand gameplay wise it would be useful, but just judging them off the burst themselves,
Yeah.
I feel like it's a negative.
So one thing I'd like to point out here is using her burst also does heal her.
Yeah. Would it heal anyone else?
No, it's just her, but also her other abilities lower her own health, so it's sort of
Okay, yeah, I see that.
a trade-off.
Yeah.
So what would you give that?
I'd give it a 7. I feel like they could do more, but it is quite good as it is.
Next we'll move on to Eula.
Vengeance will be mine. Freeze to the core. Vengeance will be mine.
I feel like they're spending a lot of time focusing on her for her animation. Like, it's a lot more than other people's. Like, they fully spin around with her and then it just quickly attacks at the end.
Yeah, it's very much about, I feel like it's showing off a huge slash that she's doing.
Yeah. Like it's the build up rather than the attack that it's focusing on, I feel.
A lot of the other ones seem a lot more magical, where this one's more like her brute force.
Yeah, it's cool though.
So what you can't see here is what will happen is after it's hit everyone, after about 5-6 seconds, it will do another big icicle will crash down and do damage as well.
Okay, yeah, that definitely helps, I feel, because on its own, it's alright.
It's very simple. It's
Yeah.
quick and simple.
Yeah, I feel like it would be really effective in battle,
Yeah,
but aesthetically wise, is not as good as the others.
I think I agree there. What would you give that?
Judging based mainly off aesthetics, probably a 6.5. Yeah, I'll go with 6.
Okay. And next we're going on to a character called Kazuha.
Falling leaves, adorn my night.
Blink.
Clouds high, the birds call. I will end you. Fallen leaves, adorn my night.
I feel like it's very similar to Eula's.
Okay.
There's
Animation-wise, yeah, I definitely see what you mean.
like probably attack-wise it's quite different, but animation-wise it looks almost the same in a way. Where it's just them getting a sword out, spinning around, and then attacking people.
Yeah, it definitely is. If you've not noticed, you can see each time it's doing it, it's sort of a different colour.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before that an emo damage, it can take the effects of other elements and add it to theirs. So that's what's happening here. It's taking the element that it's been swirled with and it's doing that damage as well as its anemo damage.
Yeah, I think that definitely helps a lot with it.
Yeah.
I do really like the difference in colours. It
mixes
gives-
things up a bit.
Yeah, but yeah, as an animation itself, like ignoring all that, it's not that interesting. But with the extra addition of the other elements, it is better.
I would include this in the...
All the flowers.
Yeah, like that's part of the burst animation.
Yeah, I guess so. I'd probably give it a 7. It's cool that it has other elements, but the actual spin round of what the character does is not very interesting.
It is, again, it's quick and simple. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to Ayaka.
Embrace the ice. So rude. Sakura swirl. Embrace the ice.
I like that she has a sword that turns into a fan.
I think, so the sword that she's summoning is made of ice, and then the actual fan herself is her possession. The fan.
Yeah, I like that transition though. It's quite cool.
Yeah, it's like she's using the fan to blow the ice towards the enemies.
I think that's really interesting. I like that it's kind of a very enclosed tornado as well that she creates.
Yeah, like an ice whirlwindy sort of effect. And it lasts a really long time as well. I didn't realise.
Does it move further away as well?
Yeah, it's pushing the enemies.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, it doesn't look like it takes away from the battle too much either.
Yeah, it's not loads of crazy camera angles or anything. It's like a quick push in and then push out.
I quite like that. Like it doesn't need to be super interesting as long as it's effective, but the interesting does help. That's a 7.5.
Okay.
I don't know how powerful it will be, but it looks cool.
Interestingly, it's one of the most powerful ones in the game at the moment,
well,
I think.
yeah.
So next we'll go into Yoimiya.
Here comes the fireworks.
I really like that.
It's
That
really
looks
nice.
cool.
It's like she's shooting big fireworks. at me.
Yeah, reminds me of it Jinx.
Yeah, I definitely could see what you mean there.
But no, I like the fireworks are fully part of her kit.
So just point out here, when the enemies get hit by this, they sort of have that sort of swirly firework animation on them.
Yeah.
I believe what happens if you attack those enemies, it sort of does an extra sort of explosion.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it looks kind of like a Catherine wheel.
Yeah.
No, I really like that because I like as well that when she goes into the air, that's when most of like the extra animation is, so that when you go back into the battle, it's almost all gone and you can go straight back in.
Yeah, she sort of lands, does a spin, and then you're back into the action.
Yeah, I think that's really good because then it gives you like the extra aesthetic version of it and then the actual playability wise as well.
Yeah, so what would you give that?
I'd give it 9.
Wow, it's like a 9. Now we'll move on to Raiden, or the Raiden Shogun.
Inazuma shines eternal. Now you shall perish. Inazuma shines eternal.
I don't really like this.
You do or you don't?
I don't.
You don't like the booby sword?
Didn't even notice that. Actually, it's almost the opposite of Yoimiga, that she doesn't go out, like, even though it kind of is similar where it's the whole animation at the beginning and then it goes into the battle, I feel like it lingers for too long, that it would be hard to go straight back in.
I don't see that myself, but I've also played this game a lot, so
Yeah.
it might feel different for me. So this one's interesting in that usually this character uses a spear or a polearm, but when she uses this, it changes into a sword, a katana.
Yeah. I see that it could be interesting. I don't know. There's just something about it that I just don't quite. I think partially it's the whole screen where it just goes to like the purple with the little spinning
Yeah, it's
thing
like
in
a
the middle.
big explosion.
Yeah, I think it's mainly that just takes it completely out.
So what would you give this?
I see that it could be good. I think it's just not for me, so I'd probably give it 6.
Okay. Next we'll move on to Kokomi. I remember you mentioned that you really like this character.
Yes. It's just a bit disappointing.
Really like this character.
Yes.
So for this one, once she's casted it, she sort of goes into the sort of floating water state. And her
Yeah,
attacks go really far.
I see the kind of like floating bit. I like that. I kind of wish she did that all the time.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It's just, especially the first two, it just seems very boring. I want to like it and I just can't. Like, aesthetically wise, it looks nice. Like, the colours are there. Like, there's highlights, lowlights, whatever. It just, there's nothing much about it other than it changes her way of movement.
Her attacks are all like shoot out in a really long line. You can see at the end of this clip that it goes all the way across to the end of the arena.
Yeah, true. Oh, there's a little jellyfish as well that I didn't see at first as well.
That's her other ability that heals.
Okay. I want to like it and I can't.
What would you give that then?
Probably have to give it a 5.
Wow.
I don't
okay.
know the playability version of it, but just it's not as interesting as the others.
So we're going to the last character now that's currently in the game, the last 5-star. And that is Ito, or Arataki Ito.
Who wants some of this? It's showtime! Who wants some of this?
I like that they've got the extra little like picture at the back of him.
Yeah, so this is another one I've shown you a bit more because it changes all of his attacks to geo damage, and he pulls out this big club, which he doesn't normally have.
I think it's mainly just the picture at the back of him when it's like the close up of him that I really like.
Yeah, it's an Oni. So he is the one and Oni.
Yeah.
That's his shtick. I think that's quite reminiscent to sort of old Japanese movies.
Yeah, I really like it. It looks cool, and
I really
it looks like
it.
every time he attacks, there's like a slight little Oni head as well around him.
There's the thing behind him which just gives him more charge attacks. That's sort of his special passive ability.
I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I really like this one.
I know that the burst itself isn't too much, but I think it's small and effective enough that it's alright. Like, it is different to the rest of them. I don't feel like many of them have done that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It does stand out compared to some others.
Even though they haven't gone to the extremes, they've pulled back well enough that it's alright the way it is. I still probably only give it an 8.5 though. It's missing something.
Okay, so now you've seen all of the 5-star bursts in the game. Would you change the rating that you've given to any of the characters?
I think overall, I'd say they're about what I want them to be though. I didn't give any 10s though. Maybe I should have.
Do you think any deserved a 10?
I think Yoimiya was almost there. I don't know, it didn't quite feel worthy of a 10. It wasn't quite like the wow factor enough.
What would you suggest to Mihoyo to do in the future to try and get one of those 10s?
I think even though they each have their own element, going away from just that one particular colour is useful.
Okay.
Like with Yoimiya, she has the fireworks of lots of different colours, even though her element is only one. I think potentially like hers as well is more individual. She's got a whole backstory and her birth is about that backstory. Whereas I feel like a lot of the others are just kind of like typical, especially Jean's.
Yeah, so I guess hers is technically, she's the Dandelion Knight and her whole thing is all dandelions. It's quite plain compared to some of the newer characters.
Yeah, I feel like if she's about Dandelion, then you could include that as well, not just have her like stand there with a sword.
So you're given 2 characters a 9. Do you have a favourite out of those 2?
I think with Zhao's, my main thing with him was like the mask that he wore, and it felt like the burst kind of accentuated that, and it made it look a lot more interesting.
Yeah, the story behind that, he doesn't normally wear the mask, but then when he puts it on, that's when he gets his full Yangsha powers, which is the spirit that he is.
I think that's really cool, but I just think Yoimiya, it looks really cool, and I think that's, if I was playing any of them, that's who I'd want to play for the burst.
I can definitely see that. I really like Yoimiya's burst. And finally, do you think as a whole Genshin's improved in their burst animation since when the game first came out?
I think for the most part, especially like school-wise, like on average, I'd say it's slowly gotten higher. There've been a couple here and there that have been like outliers. They definitely made them more interesting and more individual.
Yeah, the first few we saw were definitely quite subtle, or a lot more subtle
Yeah,
than...
there wasn't anything about them that you could see in it. It was more just like, here is someone that can use a sword.
There are a few subtle nods in the story, but obviously you've never played the game, so you can't see those. So that's all for this video. If you have any ideas or tips for future videos, please let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you'd like to see more, be sure to subscribe. See you next time.